If you're 58 years old with $400,000 left on a 6.5% mortgage, every financial guru on the internet will tell you the same thing. Pay it off and get rid of the debt for some peace of mind before you retire. Here's the piece that gets left out. That peace of mind could cost you $200,000 in retirement, and it might actually make you less safe, not more. This isn't some rare edge case. It's the exact math millions of homeowners near retirement are running, and most of them are only looking at half of it. I used to believe the standard advice too. I came close to paying off my own mortgage back in 2020. Then I sat down and ran the actual numbers on my own retirement, and what I found changed how I think about what safety really means. The math and the psychology behind this question point in two different directions, and almost nobody explains both at once. So this video walks through the real data on paying off your mortgage versus investing. Why a strategy that sounds perfect on paper fails for something like 70% of the people who try it, and a middle path that lets you keep your mortgage and your cash cushion, so a bad year in the market or a surprise medical bill never forces you to sell your home or your stocks at the worst possible time. If you're anywhere in that 55 to 65 range, and you've ever wondered whether a paid-off house actually makes you safer, go ahead and hit subscribe, because there's a liquidity trap hiding inside that advice that almost no financial advisor brings up, and it matters more the closer you get to retirement. Here's the number most people never run themselves. Take that same $400,000 and use it to pay off a 6.5% mortgage, and over the remaining life of the loan, you save something like $315,750 in interest. That sounds like a clear win. But take that same $400,000 and put it into a diversified portfolio instead, earning something close to 7% after inflation, and over the next 15 years, it grows into roughly $1,100,000. That's $1,100,000 you can actually spend. The paid-off house, by comparison, is $0 you can spend without selling the home you live in or borrowing against it. The standard advice treats a mortgage like a credit card balance, something bad you need to eliminate as fast as possible. But a fixed-rate mortgage at 6.5% is fairly cheap money once you compare it to what stocks have returned historically. Financial advisors push payoff because it feels responsible, and because a client with no mortgage needs less hand-holding. Historically, the stock market has returned somewhere around 10% a year before adjusting for inflation, which is why that 6.5% loan looks expensive on the surface, but is actually the cheaper side of the equation once you zoom out. What it doesn't do is make your retirement safer. It just moves your money into a form you can't spend without selling the house. Think about how this actually plays out. You pay off the mortgage, your monthly bill disappears, and your required withdrawal from savings each month goes down. On paper, that looks safer. Then a year later, a $50,000 medical bill shows up out of nowhere, which is not exactly rare once you're past 60. If you kept the mortgage, you write a check from that $400,000 portfolio and move on with your life. If you paid it off, that cash no longer exists. Your choices are selling stocks during whatever the market happens to be doing that month, or borrowing against your house through a home equity line of credit running around 8.5%. Say you're forced to sell stocks that happen to be down 20% that year. To net $50,000 after taxes and the loss, you might need to sell closer to $62,000 worth. That's over $12,000 gone, just because the cash you needed wasn't sitting anywhere liquid. The decision that was supposed to bring you peace of mind is the exact decision that leaves you without options when you need them most. So, on pure math, keeping the mortgage and investing the difference usually wins. But that only holds up if you actually invest the difference instead of spending it. And that's where most people quietly fall apart. The plan sounds airtight on a spreadsheet. Pay off the mortgage, then take that same monthly payment and route it into investments instead. Except that's almost never how it actually goes. Vanguard has tracked this exact behavior in people who suddenly have extra cash available, like an inheritance or a bonus, and found that less than 30% of that money gets invested within the first year. The rest goes to spending. A freed-up mortgage payment behaves the same way once it hits your bank account because it no longer feels like an obligation. This isn't a discipline problem, and it isn't a character flaw either. It's just how your brain treats money that doesn't have a job attached to it anymore. For years, that $2,500 a month left your account automatically, and you never thought twice about it. The moment the mortgage is gone, that same amount shows up in your checking account looking like found money. Nobody consciously decides to blow it. It slips out $10 and $20 at a time on things that all feel reasonable in the moment. I'll be honest, I nearly fell into this myself, just on a smaller scale. When I paid off a car loan back in 2019, I told myself I'd redirect that $500 monthly payment straight into my investment account. 6 months later, I looked at my statements and realized most of it had gone to restaurant meals and an espresso machine I use maybe twice a month. And that was $500. A mortgage payment is often 5 times that size, sometimes more. Picture the math again for a second. The version where you pay off the mortgage and faithfully invest every dollar you save each month genuinely wins over time. The problem is that version barely exists in real life. What actually happens for most people is the mortgage disappears, the monthly cash shows up, and it quietly gets absorbed into a slightly nicer lifestyle instead of a brokerage account. So if the math clearly favors investing, but human nature works against it every time, what's the actual move for someone in their early 60s who just wants to sleep at night without gambling their retirement? There's a framework that splits the difference, and it's simpler to set up than you'd expect. So here's the middle path, the one that actually works with human nature instead of against it. Instead of treating this as an all-or-nothing choice between paying off the mortgage and investing everything, split your decision based on your interest rate. If your mortgage rate is under 5%, keep it and invest aggressively. The gap between what stocks have historically returned and what you're paying in interest is wide enough, often 2% to 4% after inflation, that it compounds into an extra $150,000 to $200,000 over 15 years. There's very little reason to rush paying that debt down early. If your rate sits somewhere between 5% and 7%, you're in a gray zone, and that's where most people watching this probably live. The answer here isn't picking one side. Split whatever extra cash flow you have. Send 60% of it into a retirement account or a taxable brokerage account, and put the other 40% toward extra mortgage principal. You still chip away at the debt faster than a standard 30-year schedule, but you're not giving up your liquidity to do it. If your rate is above 7%, the math shifts in favor of paying it down or refinancing if you can. At that level, a guaranteed return from eliminating debt is genuinely competitive with what you'd expect from the market over time. Even then, Keep 6 months of expenses sitting in cash before you send extra money toward the mortgage. Picture this with real numbers. Say you're 60 years old with a $400,000 balance at 6.5%, right in that gray zone. Instead of paying it all off, you split it. $200,000 goes into what I'd call a mortgage survival bucket, sitting in a high-yield savings account or short-term bonds earning close to 4%. The other $200,000 stays invested in the market. That $200,000 sitting safely aside would cover 3 to 4 years of mortgage payments if the market crashed tomorrow, which means you're never forced to sell stocks at a loss just to keep your house. Yes, that $200,000 sitting in cash instead of going toward the mortgage costs you around $13,000 a year in interest you could have saved. But look at what it buys you. If the market drops 20% and you're forced to sell $200,000 worth of stocks to cover an emergency, you lock in a $40,000 loss in a single afternoon. That one bad stretch wipes out more than 3 years of the interest savings you gave up. This is the exact setup I use in my own retirement plan. It gives me the same psychological comfort as a paid-off house, without giving up access to my own money. Let's stress test this with something that actually happened. Picture two 62-year-olds retiring in 2008, right as the market entered one of the worst crashes in a century. Call them Lisa and Mark, and give them the exact same starting point. Both had $400,000 saved and a $400,000 mortgage at 6.5%. Mark takes the standard advice. He pays off the mortgage completely, which leaves him with $200,000 still invested and no monthly payment. Lisa takes the hybrid approach from a minute ago. She keeps her $2,500 a month mortgage payment, keeps $200,000 invested, and holds the other $200,000 in a safe, liquid survival bucket. Then the crash hits. The S&P 500 falls about 38% from its peak. Mark's $200,000 portfolio drops to roughly $123,000. He has no mortgage payment, which feels like a relief, until a $50,000 medical bill lands on his desk about a year into retirement, which is not an unusual thing to happen. Nearly 1 in 4 retirees face a medical bill of $50,000 or more within 5 years of leaving work, according to Fidelity's own research on retiree healthcare costs. Mark has no cash sitting anywhere. His only option is selling stocks that are already down, locking in a loss on that portion of his money that he can never get back. Lisa faces the same crash and the same kind of bill. Her invested $200,000 drops the same way Mark's does, but she never has to touch it because her survival bucket covers the medical bill and her mortgage payments without selling a single share. A few years later, once the market works its way back to where it started, Lisa's untouched portfolio recovers right along with it. Mark's never fully does, because the $50,000 he pulled out during the crash never gets the chance to grow back with the rest of the market. That gap alone ends up worth tens of thousands of dollars by the time they're both approaching 70. Mark did the thing that was supposed to feel safe. Lisa did the thing that actually was safe. Those turned out to be two very different decisions. Now, you might be telling yourself you're disciplined enough to just invest the difference without a bucket like this. Here's why that promise rarely survives contact with real life, and how to make it automatic instead of a matter of willpower. The fix here takes about 10 minutes to set up, which matters a lot more than that 70% failure rate makes it sound. Start by automating the split. Whatever zone you're in, set up an automatic transfer from your checking account into a brokerage account on the same day your mortgage payment currently comes out. A simple target date fund or a 60-40 mix of stocks and bonds works fine. The point isn't picking the perfect fund. It's removing the decision entirely, so the money never gets the chance to feel like found cash sitting in your checking account. Next, build your mortgage survival bucket if you haven't already. If your rate is 6.5% or lower, aim to keep 12 months of mortgage payments sitting in a high-yield savings account or a money market fund paying north of 4%. Treat it as untouchable except for a genuine emergency, not a vacation fund with a different label. If your rate is above 7%, look at refinancing. Rates on a 30-year fixed loan are running around 6.8% these days, and a 15-year fixed loan at something closer to 6.2% could lower your rate and shorten your payoff considerably. Just don't raid your survival bucket to make that happen. Fund the bucket first. Check in on this once a year, not every time the market wobbles. Rates change, your mortgage balance shrinks, and the split that made sense at 60 might look different at 65. A 5-minute review once a year is enough to keep the plan on track without turning it into a hobby. And if, after all that, you still want the mortgage gone completely, that's fine. Just do it last, after the bucket is full and your retirement accounts are maxed out for the year, not as the very first move. This is what it actually looks like with real numbers. Say you've got a $250,000 balance at 6.5% with a $2,500 monthly payment. You set up $1,500 a month, flowing automatically into a 60-40 portfolio, and $1,000 extra going straight to principal. 10 years later, assuming something close to a 7% average return, that $1,500 a month alone has grown into roughly $250,000 on top of whatever your original portfolio did, and your mortgage balance is far smaller than it would have been on the standard schedule. You end up with real growth and a shrinking mortgage at the same time, instead of picking one and giving up the other entirely. So this is the actual takeaway, without the noise. Paying off your mortgage early isn't a bad move. It's just usually not the best one. Unless your rate is above 7%, your retirement accounts are already maxed out, and you've got a real emergency fund sitting untouched. For most people between 55 and 65, a hybrid approach, one that keeps some liquidity and automates the investing side, wins on the math and on the psychology at the same time. That's the part the standard advice leaves out. This was never really pay off the mortgage versus invest. It's about whether you can access your own money the day you actually need it. None of this requires overhauling your entire financial life or ripping up a plan you've already built over the years. It's a handful of small, automatic moves, the kind you set up once and mostly forget about, that quietly change which version of retirement you end up living in. If you're getting close to retirement and you want your money positioned for both safety and growth instead of picking one at the expense of the other, go ahead and subscribe. I'll keep walking through the actual numbers behind decisions like this one, so you're never just guessing. The goal was never to be the richest person in the cemetery. It's having enough cash on hand to handle whatever life throws at you without losing the house you spent decades paying for. Thanks for watching.